Hey guys, welcome back to Sparkman Homestead. I have another Meals of the Week video for you. There's some good recipes on this one and definitely some flops. This first one was kind of a little bit of a flop, but I'm going to show you anyways because it turned out pretty good, but the cooking process was kind of my error, I think. So we're going to make a honey mustard air fryer pork chop. So what you want to do first of all is take 4 pork chops about 3/4 inch thick. That's what they recommend. I probably did a little bit thicker than that, and I probably wouldn't do that. I would go maybe thinner than 3/4 thick. Then you're going to take 1/3 cup of Dijon mustard and 1 tablespoon of honey, and you're just going to mix that all together. You can do this in a Ziploc bag. I'm just doing it in my Tupperware marinator. I love this thing. You just put it in and then you put it in the fridge. You can even shake it in this container and flip it upside down. It's amazing. So you're going to put that in the fridge, and it says to marinate the pork chops for 4 hours or overnight. I got them started at probably, I would say 9 a.m. and then at 5 o'clock I was ready to make supper, so I pulled them out. I would think the longer you marinate them, the more tender it would be. That time frame during the day was perfect. Once they're done marinating, you are going to get your other stuff all ready. So you're going to use some seasoned breadcrumbs. The original recipe that I have linked for you actually suggests using a pinko breadcrumb. I just make my own sourdough breadcrumbs. This when sourdough goes stale, I throw it in my blender, make little breadcrumbs with it, and then I keep it in my freezer just so it stays fresh a little bit longer. When I was seasoning my breadcrumbs, I was trying to think of like a good flavor profile to go with pork chops. I decided to use a granulated onion, granulated garlic, some red pepper flakes, some ground mustard, some salt, some pepper, and some smoked paprika. You can use really whatever you would like when you're making your own seasoning. It is personal preference 100%. So you're just gonna mix that until it's all incorporated. Then you're gonna take your honey mustard pork chops and you are just gonna put them into the breadcrumbs and just make sure they're really coated. The recipe says that no egg is required. I'm guessing it's because the honey mustard is acting as the agent to make everything stick together. Then you're gonna put them in your air fryer. My particular air fryer, I actually have to preheat for 7 minutes, so I already did the preheating. So I'm gonna cook this on 400 for 10 to 12 minutes, and you're gonna flip halfway. I also seasoned both sides with a little bit of avocado oil. While that was doing its first half of the cooking process, I wanted to make a really nice salad. Because of the frost, I had to go outside and harvest most of our lettuce. Luckily, it actually survived the frost, and I have a whole bunch that is still kicking in the garden. So we're gonna have salads for a little bit longer, which is really awesome. I'm just using what I have available in my fridge. I had harvested a whole bunch of peppers before the frost, so I added those in. So it's just a little bit of a different variety of peppers. I had a little bit of carrots that I had picked up from our local Amish, and then Steven loves black olives, so I'm just getting a little bit of olives cut up for him. Now it's time to flip the pork chops because we're at the halfway point. I probably let it go a little bit more than halfway. So this is kind of where I got into the fail part of the recipe. I went to go and flip them and everything stuck to the bottom of the air fryer. So I lost pretty much all of the delicious seasoned breadcrumbs that I had them on. Plus they were super thick, so they did not cook the time that the recipe allotted. I actually had to almost double the cooking time to get those pork chops to be cooked all the way through. Put them in again, waiting for them to finish cooking. I'm getting my salad finished up here. I had a jar of home canned bruschetta in the fridge, and I thought that's perfect. I'll just use those tomatoes in the salad. And then in that jar of bruschetta, there was a whole bunch of leftover like sauce. So I thought I'm just gonna make a salad dressing with that. So I took a little bit of balsamic vinegar, some white wine vinegar, a little bit of avocado oil, shook it up, and then did a little taste test. I decided it needed to have a little bit of granulated onion, some dry mustard, and a little bit of garlic. Shook it up again. I should have added salt. I missed that step, but salt would have made that dressing delicious. But it went perfect because we had bruschetta tomatoes in the salad, so it really worked really well with the salad. So there's the pork chops. You can see because they were super thick, they ended up burning. What breading did end up sticking on them, but the pork chops tasted really good, and I think it's from marinating in that Dijon mustard and honey through the day. Really, really good other than the bread issue. So I had a bunch of leftovers in the fridge. I had some tortellini and pesto that I had made a couple nights prior, and then that mashed potato that we had with the Mississippi pot roast. So we just used those as a side, and then we had the salad. I needed to kind of work on the breading. It usually happens when I use my air fryer. I cannot get the breading to stick to the thing. I think it's just a learning curve that I need to figure out, but Other than that, the pork chops tasted really good, and it was nice having a nice fresh salad with that homemade salad dressing. For the next meal, this was one of the win meals. This particular night, I was really struggling to make something. I was really tired. I still haven't been feeling 100%, and I really just wanted something really quick and easy. Making meals from scratch, they don't necessarily have to be a long, thought-out process. You really can just, if you have a good stocked freezer and pantry, which is 100% the reason why I have an excellent stocked freezer and pantry, because I need to, on nights where I have zero energy, I need to be able to make a good, healthy, quick meal that is going to be nutritious, easy on the budget, and just really quick to make. So this recipe kind of fit all of those categories. So I'm going to make a creamy bacon mushroom pasta. So what I did there is I took about 12 ounces of my home cured bacon and just cut it up with some kitchen scissors and just fried it until it was completely cooked through. In a large stock pot in the background, I have some spaghetti noodles cooking. You don't necessarily need to use spaghetti. You can use whatever you like. The recipe recommends 8 ounces of pasta. Once that bacon was cooked through, I removed it off of the skillet, put it onto a lined plate, and then I added my mushrooms. You want to use about 8 ounces of mushrooms. I used a baby bell mushroom for this, but in the reviews, a whole bunch of people said that they used a different kind of mushroom and it worked perfect. So I didn't have enough bacon grease left over in my skillet, so I had to add a little bit of butter to that, but I just sauteed the mushrooms until they were completely cooked through. Once the pasta was cooked to al dente, I just drained it and rinsed it and set it aside. Then once my mushrooms were completely cooked through, I just removed them and put them on the exact same plate that the bacon was on. I did miss a little bit of a step here. You're supposed to take 2 cloves of garlic minced and add them with the mushrooms near the end, but because I missed it, I just added the minced stuff to the pile, and then it ended up cooking through when I added it back in. So when I was reviewing this recipe, I noticed right away that the amount of sauce that it was saying to make was not going to be saucy enough for me, so I ended up doubling everything. So to this skillet that you just removed your mushrooms from, you are going to add 1/3 cup of chicken broth or dry white wine. The reviews said that people used both of them and both turned out amazing. Then you're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, 1 teaspoon of lemon juice, 1/2 teaspoon of Dijon mustard, and 1 teaspoon of flour. I upped it because the reviews also said that it was too runny and they ended up having to come in and thicken it more, so I automatically just went ahead and added 1 tablespoon of flour. Worked out perfect. You're going to whisk it until it's nice and thick. Then you're going to stir in 1 cup of a heavy whipping cream, and then just do a little bit of stir until it is thickened just a little bit. Add some salt and pepper to taste. Because my chicken broth was unsalted, I definitely went heavy with the salt. So once that's cooked for about 2 minutes, it says, you're going to add your mushrooms and your bacon back into that skillet. It suggests at the end to add Parmesan to top it, but I thought a little bit of grated fresh Parmesan would actually be good in the sauce as well. So just grated a little bit of that. Then what you're going to do is take your pasta. I cooked way too much spaghetti, so I ended up just using half of it. So I added the spaghetti to it, and you just want to stir it, and it says just stir it until it's heated through. Add a little bit more salt and pepper to taste if you need it. But this recipe was such a really quick, easy recipe to make, and it was really, really delicious. It was kind of reminded me of a carbonara in a way. Way easier to make though. Just delicious. You could go nuts and add like broccoli to this. You could add anything that you would like in this just to kind of heavy it up on the vegetables a little bit more. That day I'd actually made a loaf of fresh sourdough bread, and there's nothing better than fresh bread. So we had that on the side. Delicious meal. The next meal we're gonna make is a Salisbury meatball and mashed potatoes. When I first seen this recipe, it kind of drew me in because I was trying to find something away from what the traditional Salisbury steak is, which is usually a hamburger. I wanted something a little bit different, but kind of with that taste. And the beginning part of this recipe, she actually goes into detail about how she really loves the IKEA meatballs that you can get at their cafeteria, and she wanted to try to make a copycat version of that at home. So this recipe I went into it thinking it was going to be like an IKEA meatball. Whenever I'm making a meatball recipe or even a hamburger recipe, I always try to triple it and then put the extra in the freezer just for a really quick to easy grab meal. So the recipe that you're seeing me make is 3 times the amount. So to get started, we are going to add 1 pound of ground beef, a 1/4 cup of breadcrumbs. She says that she used panko. I just use my sourdough breadcrumbs. Now, this is not in the recipe, but I just know from making meatballs, adding egg is really good to be a binder. So I added 2 eggs to this. You want to add 1 tablespoon of tomato ketchup, 1 teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. As you've seen there, I just add it with my heart. I love Worcestershire, and the measurement is just a really loose guideline that I never follow. Then you're gonna add 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 garlic grated. I just use the pre-minced. And then you're gonna add 1/2 an onion grated. I didn't add the onion, I just added my onion powder. And then you are going to just make them into 1-inch meatballs. As you can see here, I'm definitely making way more than I need for this recipe, but this is so perfect. I just put these in the freezer, and then once they're flash frozen, I just put them in a vacuum seal bag, and then I have easy to get meatballs when I need a really quick meal. So I'm gonna make some cauliflower on the side in my little steam basket there. That's just cauliflower from my garden. And then I'm gonna make some mashed potatoes, just cutting up the potatoes to get them boiling. The recipe recommends that you fry the meatballs in a skillet with about 1 to 2 tablespoons of oil, but I like doing them in the oven. So I have my oven preheated at 450 degrees and I'm baking them for about 30 minutes. While they are in the oven cooking, we are gonna get our gravy started. So what you're gonna do is take 2 tablespoons of butter, get that melted, and then you are going to whisk in 2 tablespoons. It says plain flour. I just used an all-purpose flour. It suggests using 1 onion and actually taking that onion and cooking it until it's translucent in the butter before you add the flour, but I omitted the onion, so I just went straight to adding the flour. Then you want to stir in 1 garlic clove minced, and then once that is all cooked and the flour smell is completely gone, like it's smelling nice and nutty, you want to slowly stir in 2 cups of a beef stock. You want to stir this in and let it kind of cook for about 3 minutes. It says wait until the sauce is thickened up a little bit. I came in and just added a little bit of onion powder because I omitted the sliced onion and I still wanted that flavor, so I just stirred that in while it was thickening up. My meatballs are all done, so I am taking them out of the oven. What you want to do is stir in 1 tablespoon of tomato ketchup and 1 tablespoon of barbecue sauce. I didn't have any barbecue sauce and I didn't want to open a container for this, so I just doubled up on the ketchup. You're going to add in 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1/2 teaspoon of freshly cracked black pepper, and then salt to taste, and then give that a stir. It says you really only need to stir it for about 1 more minute, and then you're gonna add the meatballs back in here, and then you're gonna let that kind of just cook for a little bit just to get the meatballs absorbing some of that flavor. While that was cooking, I just got my potatoes off of the oven and just got them all mashed up. I don't know if this necessarily tasted like the IKEA meatball. To be honest, I don't really remember what the IKEA meatball tasted like. I know that this definitely did not taste like the Salisbury steak that I was used to. Steven really enjoyed it. He said it actually had almost a chipotle taste to it, so he liked it. I was not 100% a fan of it. I like the traditional Salisbury steak taste of it, and I was hoping for that. So I think next time I make it, I'm just gonna use my own Salisbury steak recipe and just put the meatballs with it. But the Weizen meatballs were delicious. So that meatball recipe is really, really good. For the next recipe, we are going to make a delicious orange cream bundt cake. This comes together super easy, and it actually has no refined sugar in it. So it is really, really good if you're trying to avoid refined sugar. Now, it does have maple syrup in it, so it is not completely sugar-free. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take 2 sticks of butter, 1/2 cup of butter at room temperature, just put them in a bowl, and I just set them aside, because one thing I like to do to kind of save money is I like to use the butter wrappers, because they always have a little bit of butter left over on them, and I like to use it to grease my pans. So you do need to grease a bundt cake pan. If you don't have the leftover butter wrappers, definitely you could just use a cooking spray in this, or oil, whatever you have available. Next, to a clean medium-sized bowl, you want to add your flour. This recipe calls for 3 cups of a whole wheat flour. I'm not sure if you could get away with substituting an all-purpose in here. You may be able to, but it might change the liquid to flour ratio, because I know sometimes when cooking with a whole wheat wheat flour, you tend to need a little bit more liquid to it. It would be a fun experiment to try using a all-purpose in this. Next, we're going to take 2 oranges. I like to roll the oranges a little bit because we are going to be juicing them. I find that when I roll them, it helps release the juice a little bit easier. So we're going to take those 2 oranges and we are going to zest them into the dry mixture bowl and then whisk it all together until it is incorporated. Once we get it all stirred together, we're going to cut those oranges and we are going to juice them into a little bowl here. Now, I was trying to use this juicer and it just was not working. These oranges were a tad bit big, so I got out my other hand juicer, which I love. I picked this up at IKEA and I've had it for years. It's amazing for juicing things. So anyways, we're gonna get them all juiced and we're gonna set them aside. We're gonna take those 2 sticks of butter or the half cup of butter and we are going to cream it together. This recipe says to have it at room temperature and I could not agree more with it. Mine was not quite at full room temperature and it wasn't creaming together as it kind of should have. So I definitely recommend make sure your butter is softened. Then to that butter, we are going to add 1.5 cups of maple syrup, and then we are going to add 4 eggs. This recipe is excellent if you have an extra amount of eggs available. Then you're gonna add 3/4 cup of heavy cream. You could probably get away with using like a half and half in here also. And then 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then just that orange juice that we just zest out. One thing I like to add, sometimes I find that the orange zest and the orange juice itself doesn't have enough orange flavor. I really like that orange to come through. So I just came in and added a little bit of orange extract to this batter. So you're gonna slowly incorporate your dry mixture in with your wet mixture, and you're just going to cook it or beat it until it is all combined. Scrape the sides kind of as you go along just to make sure that you are getting everything together. So now once you get everything combined, oh, the other thing I also forgot to mention is I have my oven preheated at 350 degrees. So we are gonna take that batter and we are gonna pour it into our greased Bundt pan. I like to take the Bundt pan once all the batter is in it and just tap it a little bit because I find that that releases all of the air bubbles and it helps it just kind of cook more evenly. I also cooked this on a cookie sheet and I'm so glad I did because it had bubble over, like the bottom of it was all kind of seeped through that middle hole. So definitely cook this on some type of baking sheet so that you don't get a mess in your oven. So it says to cook for 45 to 50 minutes. After the 50 minutes, you see me pulling it out there and it was not cooked. So I put it back in for another 15 minutes. It still wasn't cooked, but I noticed it was getting brown. So I covered it with tin foil and put it back in again for another 15 minutes. After that time, I took it out. It did a little toothpick check. Everything came up clean. So I left it to cool for 10 minutes. It says around 5 to 10 minutes you want to just let it cool on the cooking sheet. After you let it rest, you want to come with a knife and just cut around all of the edges, just making sure that you are completely releasing it from that Bundt pan. And then you are going to put it onto a pie plate upside down, and then you're going to try to release it from the Bundt pan. I found that I had to give it a little couple of shakes. Right there is, you see what I was talking about with the stuff kind of seeping in the middle. I'm so glad I had the cookie sheet. So I gave it a couple little shakes and it released perfect. I was so happy. Sometimes that doesn't always work that way. Recipe suggests to have this topped with some whipped cream. I actually chose to top it with some icing that I made and it was so delicious. I cannot recommend this recipe enough. For our last meal, we are going to make a delicious soup. It is a cheeseburger soup. It turned out really well, and I definitely will be making this again. It was delicious. So what you want to do is you want to take 1 pound of lean ground beef. It also says that if you do not have that, you can actually use 4 previously grilled hamburgers. It says that is an amazing substitute for this. So you want to cook that beef until it is completely cooked through. Once it is cooked through, just remove it and put it into a separate bowl and set it aside. To that same pot, you want to add 2 tablespoons of butter and you just want to melt it over a medium heat. And then once it is melted, you are going to add in 3 small to medium celery stalks. Make sure they're diced. And then you also want to add 2 large carrots. Now you can have them shredded or diced. I actually had some pre-shredded carrots in my fridge, so I just added those to that. If you are using an onion, you would add 1 large onion chopped, and you want to saute these until they are tender. It says about 10 to 12 minutes. Once they're nice and tender, you're going to come in and add approximately 1 clove of garlic. I just used a teaspoon of garlic here, just stirring it in. Now, because I I did not use the onion, I still wanted the onion flavor, I just came in and added some of my homemade onion powder, just stirred that in until it became nice and fragrant. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take 4 medium potatoes, you're going to peel them and dice them and add them in at this point. You are going to add in 32 ounces. It suggests a low sodium chicken broth. It's about 4 cups. So you're going to stir that in. And then you want to add about 1 teaspoon of both salt and pepper, just to taste, I would say. And then you're going to bring that to a boil. Once it does reach a boil, you're going to reduce the heat slightly and simmer it uncovered for 20 to 25 minutes or until the potatoes are tender. In a small bowl, you're going to whisk together 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. I just used an arrowroot in this. And then you want to take 1 cup of whole milk. You can use half and half. And then you're going to whisk that in with that cornstarch or arrowroot. This recipe actually calls for 2 cups of milk, so you need to make sure that you have it divided. You're going to use 1 cup in this cornstarch mixture, and then the other cup we add later on. So you're going to whisk in this arrowroot milk mixture, and then just make sure that it gets good and thick. It says boil for about 2 minutes, making sure that it's good and thick. I added a little bit more salt because I did a little taste test and it wasn't quite there because, again, my broth is unsalted. So this recipe calls for 3 cups of shredded cheddar cheese, and it says do not use pre-shredded. Make sure it is freshly shredded cheese. I did not have any cheddar cheese, so I used the mozzarella, so I used substantially less because I knew that mozzarella was going to get really, really sticky. So once that cheese is all melted, you want to stir in that other 1 cup of milk and add your beef back to this soup. Then you are going to reduce the heat to medium low, and you're going to let this cook until it is just steaming and not boiling. So that is the soup. It was so delicious. I'm really on the soup bandwagon right now because of the cold weather, but this is the last meal of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and again, hope I gave you a little bit of inspiration for your upcoming week. I hope you have a great day or night whenever you're watching this, and I will see you on the next video. Bye, guys.